Alright, what's up, y'all? Let's do a little bit of like ukulele sounding stuff. Frank the guitar for a little bit of an intro there. This is In the Image Clothing Company podcast. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, a clothing company, kind of, but really what we do is address the human body's natural function, coming at it from the skeletal system. It's not about the fat content. It's not about the muscle mass. Those things come and go at different times in our lives. Wow. Okay. So, the human body, though, is about a foundation. It's about a natural position and the structural system of it. Just as within the gospel of Jesus Christ, we have a firm foundation set on our rock, which is Jesus Christ himself. The body just has to be able to have its only working position. And we put clothing onto it. And it can be imbalanced. It can be weight-wise or size-wise. It can be oversized and fall to our dominant side, pulling that side of the body away from its center line. The body has a center line, no belief, no opinion, no yoga class. There's a spine, there's the sternum in the front, there's the nose. The body has to stay as best as we can within our own situations in its center position and in its neutral position at every joint. And then we can go out of those positions and back to them and then rest in the neutral, in the center. Otherwise, it's just fighting to just function. And then anything you try to do on top of just being alive is going to be a lot of work because of something we've placed on us. So that's why we're a clothing company in the image, because we are universally designed in the image of our living God, Jesus the Christ. And then, yes, clothing company, all one word, In the Image Clothing Company. Here we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ within the podcast, In the Image Clothing Company podcast. But we also have two other sides to our 3/3 of a company. We have what I call the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, where I discuss the anatomy of the human body, how to just always keyword allow the human body to work through clothing is the biggest thing that we do that through. We also discuss clothing there, modifications, materials, how to just allow the body to just do the only thing it does. It only does what it does. And then we also have another third of us, which is In the Image Clothing Company Music, where we discuss setups of mostly guitars to mesh with the human body's natural function, the hands, the neutral wrist, traveling through the body, positions of the spine as we sit or stand playing, sizes of guitars, and just allowing the body to do all things music, whatever we do get into over there. So I also make music there. It's not only instructional stuff. Now, all right, let's talk about real quick where clothing needs to sit on every human being, just because the structural skeletal system is designed the same. Any time period, man, woman, tall, short, any age, any part of the earth, does not matter. Our pants need to be all the way above our hips, off of the hips entirely, so they're not restricted, slightly higher in the front than in the rear with that waistband, because that way the core muscles will just stay as they would always naturally be. The only way the body works activated. The body only works activated as a whole through everything it ever does. Otherwise, if something within it is turned off, a muscle's not working, then something else and many things have to do some sort of compensation, and the body will be altered from its only working state. Now, the tops that we wear, the seams on top of our shoulders need to sit evenly behind these little bones that are up on the top of the shoulders. Those are the other ends of our collarbones, and that allows the shoulders to be in their neutral position where they'd naturally be behind the body. And then at the very edges of our shoulders is where those edge seams should be, because that's where the shoulder has its motion. Button-ups are different than a singular seam because they have a band of material on top, and so it just naturally will sit behind the shoulders. Now, that's one reason why I love button-ups so much, and we will have button-ups that are amazing for you to purchase if you'd like, in the Image Clothing Company clothing when that comes, and I'll talk about that a little bit more toward the end, as long as this doesn't cut off because of storage space filling up, which I don't see happening, but it's definitely happened in past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. So this episode is number 57, and is titled Freedom. And we'll get into why, but I almost passed by our two prerequisites. In addition to just allowing clothing to sit where the body works, we have two other things that we call prerequisites, as in the Image Clothing Company, to further aid in no restriction in the human body. Firstly is the shoelacing technique that we use. In the Image Clothing Company's shoelacing technique, you can find wherever you find us online. Being 2025, we have the internet. Today, if I didn't mention, it's the 10th of February, 2025. And that technique, included with just tying your shoes evenly over toward the inside on both feet to the center line of the body, is just the only technique that will not alter the feet in any way. It just shapes your shoe as your feet are naturally. And secondly, we remove all tags from clothing anywhere, even within our shoes. They're just going to either not allow the muscles that are against where the tag is placed to activate naturally, or they're actually causing a physical gap, changing the position of the skeletal system where they are placed within clothing. So we remove all tags. Okay, now we'll get into this episode of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast 57, titled Freedom. Here we go. Freedom is a weird thing. It's a thing that is very misunderstood, definitely by me in the past, and I will never understand anything like fully in this life. I'm a human being, right? But in my past, I definitely very much misunderstood what freedom meant. I also live in the United States of America and have up until this point through my entire life. From when I was born is what I mean. So here, that's like our whole thing is freedom as Americans. And I'm not mocking it, but I kind of am. And hear it correct, because I know the sacrifices that have come and have had to get us to the level of freedoms that we do have. And we have a lot as citizens of the United States of America. I understand that, and I really do. I do much more than most, truly, but then again, I still don't know, right? I mean, I haven't actually been there fighting the wars on the front lines, and right, definitely not. But what I will say is there's a lot more to freedom than just what we think of the word being, especially as Americans. If you are from any part of the earth, you can hear this episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. It's not just like I'm speaking to Americans only, but me being the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, this is where I have lived up until this point my entire life. And so I understand that Americans, more so than the rest of the world, have their almost their own definition of what freedom is and what they think of and believe about what freedom really is. And so that's why I'm going to really get into this and discuss it like that. It's going to be really cool. So the thing with freedom is a lot of people really get just this idea and this belief and this kind of pre-programmed, this is what freedom is. And like you drop 4 walls around it and there you go. This is what freedom looks like. And you've got like eagles because that's, our country's national bird. And you've got, the flag of the United States of America blowing in the wind and a soldier up on a hill with a salute and a rifle, you know what I mean? Yeah, that's not quite what freedom, as far as the word and the term and what it really is, that's not what it means. That's how we, a lot of times as Americans, see freedom. And again, we definitely have so many freedoms within this country, and that is a blessing in the ways that it is, and with an actual understanding of what is going on. Yes, we have a lot that's very much a gift, a very, very big privilege to live in this country. There's people across the globe, and at any and all time periods ever that's the case, that are just very much under control from other human beings, and we don't have that here to a very high degree at all. We're quite free, and it is great in a lot of ways. But I mean, what I want to really be sure to say is a lot of Americans, citizens of the United States of America, think that this is a perfect country, and in absolutely no way and by absolutely no means. We can have full appreciation and gratitude for what we do have here without trying to be like, this is the perfect country, because it's just not. Nor could any country ever be, ever, because we live in the human state. That's the whole point of being a human being, is having trials and struggles and things that we have to overcome to rely on our perfect God. That's why we're human beings. We're never going to have a perfect country. And by no means, and I will never change my opinion on this because it's not an opinion to have, it's just the truth. By no means will the United States of America, nor could it just ever, by any measure of anything, be a perfect country. There's no way. And 2 degrees, heard correct, right? Don't think that I'm saying something I'm not. But 2 degrees and in ways heard with the right context, hearing where I'm coming from, as I've said since the very start of In the Image Clothing Company, hear what we are saying, not what you are hearing. I'm not going to say anything perfect, right? We're sinful by nature human beings, but this needs to be said within quote unquote my podcast, right? I'm the founder of this company. This needs to be said and documented within this, and right now is when I'm doing it, okay? Yeah, there's a lot of actually not so great things that come with freedom, okay? Context, heard correct, things like that have to be paired with what I just said, but I'm going to get into it because a lot of times we just meaning as a human race, we want at certain times and certain ones of us individuals want absolute freedom to do whatever we want no matter what. And if you get to the point where you have literally absolute freedom, you actually have anarchy. You actually have 0 laws at that point. And you actually have no repercussions for anything that you do because you are entirely free, right? With like perfect freedom, let's say. You are entirely free to do whatever you, as is every human being, myself included, being a sinful by nature human being, at that point, now you have every right to do whatever you could possibly cause to happen. That's true, perfect, ultimate freedom. We do not want that. We don't. We need to be governed. Or we'll go off the rails. We get a little bit mad at somebody. Next thing you know, there's like 85 people dead, right? For whatever reason, whether you've got firearms, whether you have a belief that firearms are good only or bad only or good only with parameters or whatever. If you've got just a stick with a rock tied to the end of it, I mean, you go kill 59 people because you're all mad about something. If there was no law to govern what happens because you, in that case, had ultimate perfect freedom to do whatever you wanted. Because one human being having all the freedom with 0 repercussions makes it so that any other human being that they could come in contact with could have 0 freedoms because they could be dead. And then there's no human being there in the way that we understand what a human being is to have any kind of freedom at all. Okay? So freedom is something that needs to be understood. It's not just, I don't care if this sounds mocking. Again, I do understand how privileged we are in all the ways that we really actually are as Americans. I really get it. I do. But I'm going to say this, no matter how mocking it sounds, there's all these Americans that are, we're America, we do whatever we want, and we shoot our guns, and we have our barbecues, and we celebrate 4th of July, and we drive our big lifted trucks, and we don't care about the environment, and, right? There's your, like, typical, stereotypical, really is the word, American, that a lot of people view as what it means to be American, okay? And that's not by any means just what all Americans are, by no means, but it's funny, the people who like claim to be the most American, they act like that, and it's you know, your freedoms can't come at the cost of somebody else losing theirs. Otherwise, where's freedom? Who's to say? Just because you've got a bigger stick than the other guy, now you have freedom, but not another human being? That really is, again, the opposite of freedom at that point. That is anybody else potentially being a captive because you believe that you can be the one with ultimate freedom. And that can only happen if nobody else can step on your freedom toes, right? So we got to realize what freedom really is and what it really means. I'm glad that this started out that way. I mean, I was planning on really giving a good, like, kind of hitting it from the sides where you can see what I'm actually depicting as freedom rather than just viewing it as, like, a lot of Americans do. But I'm glad that it got worded the way that it did. Yeah, that's great. Because people don't realize it. We get blinded. We attach ourselves to things. Again, at the end of the day, we're human beings. We're sons and daughters of our living God. I mean, there was no United States of America until 1776, or like around that time, like when the Constitution was written, I mean, what's that been, 300 something years, give or take? I mean, I'm not trying to be exact with the dates and numbers, but just to kind of give some context, I mean, there's been human beings on the earth for thousands of years, and somewhere around 300-ish, I don't know, I'm not even like thinking about how many years it's actually been, and maybe I know because of like something, and I'm not thinking about it right now. It doesn't matter to be exact. The point is, it's just a short amount of time that we've had a country. And again, labeling a country as something is just something we do. We write on a piece of paper that was just once a tree. The ink that we're using to write with is either just something from nature or something that we've created in a factory, and there we go, and that apparently changes something. And again, I'm not trying to mock to degrees that are not okay to, because I get it. I mean, again, we have a lot of beautiful freedoms, and yes, that piece of paper has done a lot for us as citizens of the United States of America. But it's just a piece of paper at the end of the day. I mean, anybody can just overthrow anything at the end of the day. Again, who's got the bigger stick? They're the ones in charge, really, if somebody's trying to be in charge, and it's that simple. Yeah. I mean, the ease of overthrowing a country is insane. Because really what you do is just, well, that's what it says within a lot of like the, founding documents of the United States of America. A nation divided against itself can't stand, right? It's so easy to overthrow a nation, and it usually happens from inside. And so you can place all the importance you want onto a nation or an empire or a whatever, but at the end of the day, they always crumble. They always fall. I mean, I'm very grateful to be an American, to be, a citizen of this country. I was just born into this part of the earth is really all it is again, right? I mean, let's see it for as it is. But there are a lot of great things that do come with this, being a citizen of this country. But at the same time, we got to realize how many people are so proud of their country or their area of the earth, and then it gets overthrown, right? It just happens. We got to be able to understand that freedom can't be our goal. It really can't, because you're only free till you're a captive. And what does that mean, right? You're only free to go hike all the mountains you want and go on the runs and go on the walks and do anything you want physically. And I don't like running, right? It's not my opinion, but I just mean there's always complications with running, injuries to the human body. The body can run short distances if it needs to, but just all this like endurance running and running for exercise. We talk about that a lot within In The Image Clothing Company. We always will. But, hiking mountains, I went on a hike today, actually. I just went out, and I was so grateful to. I mean, the whole time I was just praying gratitude. I hadn't been on a hike in a long time. I used to just head up mountains all the time when I lived about 40 minutes north of where I currently do. But I haven't just been on a hike in quite a long time. I prefer to just hike with no trails, just to go up a mountain. To me, hiking on a trail, and I mean, you can do whatever you want in this case, but to me, the way I view it is like, it's not really like a hike. You're not really in nature when you're on a man-made trail. So I love to just kind of go up the side of the mountain. Times and places for everything, but I do very much prefer to just go straight up the mountain as if I were like a deer or a goat or an elk or animals we have around here. I mean, they're just going up the terrain, and I love to do that. I mean, that's where I actually feel like I'm really hiking. But the point is, you can be all free to do that all you want until you have no leg. Right? Because you twisted an ankle or broke it, or like entirely did something to part of your body and it had to be amputated or whatever. And in modern 2025, we have prosthetics, we have things that we can do to help with those kind of things. But the point is, you can put all the focus on your freedom and say, my entire life is okay as long as I'm free to hike wherever I want. And then you get some kind of physical illness or, again, injury to where you can't ever go on a single hike again in your life. The same way, right? Maybe there's like a way that you're able to go up a mountain, but it's not a hike in a traditional just walk in your own two legs anymore, right? And things happen, and sometimes people are born without two legs to begin with. But that's what I mean. There's all that's on your freedom. What you labeled as your freedom is to be able to hike for the rest of your life is now entirely gone. And so now you've attached your identity as what you are, which really is just a son or daughter of our living God. just a human being in this form, whatever that's shaped like or operates like or what. You're just a human being. But you've attached your meaning to being what you actually are, which is what I just described, to being somebody who is free, right? Like that stereotypical American that I was saying. And then something happens and now you're not what you decided as free anymore. And now you have this like crisis of, oh no, who and what am I? Well, the same thing you were before, right? That's why we have to know our true identity, which is a son or a daughter of our living God, Jesus the Christ. That is who and what we are and all we will ever be. And that's not only enough, but that's everything that we could ever ask for. Yes. So freedom needs to be understood. And I'm not telling anyone what to do, but kind of, because if not, then you just, you're freaking out over stuff. And it's very common to have pretty darn prideful Americans. Pride's a weird thing. I always talk about how I'm a pretty prideful person because I recognize it, but to a degree, it's just my natural personality. Like, I've talked about that within just the past few episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, especially in more depth, where I couldn't be something I'm not. None of us can. And who I am is naturally somebody who has this like personality that's prideful in a way. Like, but what I'm saying with pride right here is, as Americans, right, or as whatever we want to assign ourselves to, it's like, proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free, right? And that, again, there's a lot of good that has come with and from and through that, but we got to see it for what it is, because we are being prideful about the pride that we have, right? I mean, we're being so self-centered on the fact that we're better than another human being. We're putting up walls to put other humans out because we're so free. But what makes us better than them? Just because we got a bigger stick. So what if they get a bigger stick, right? Just meaning you're fighting somebody with you've got a small stick and they've got a big one. Who wins? The person with the big stick. Usually, right? So with saying that, it's like, that's what I mean. Every empire crumbles. Every country that's so proud of its own doings can get overthrown by somebody else who's more proud of their own doings. I mean, the whole point is, as disciples of Jesus Christ, we're meant to, well, it says, there's no greater love than if a man would lay down his life for his brother. And that's the exact opposite of what this stereotypical, quote unquote, American, like, we're better than you, put up walls, kill you if you try to overthrow us, and we're prideful, and that's what we're proud of being, right? Like, it is strange. And so, but then we call it freedom, but only at the expense of somebody else's either captivity or absolute just death, right? Strange. So I don't like wars, but nobody likes wars except for the people who win. But everybody only can win until they lose, right? You can't win 100% of the time. Anybody who believes that is just denying truth. You can't win 100% of the time, no matter what you want to believe. I mean, you can try to manipulate your way out of that, and that happens a lot. I've definitely seen that happen a lot with people in my own personal life, but it just doesn't happen. I mean, we all fail. We all lose at some point. I love losing, and I've talked about that in past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. We'll probably do an entire episode one day, probably on losing. It's going to be awesome if we do. No promises though. We might not, but I don't care. If it happens, it happens, right? It's something I could definitely discuss and give a lot of good context about. But yeah, again, freedom, like, you're only free if there's an opposing thing to freedom, right? Within the gospel of Jesus Christ, we talk about opposition in all things. There's no such thing as freedom if there wasn't captivity. And so really captivity is whatever is determining your freedom, the opposite of that is captivity for something or someone else. And that's America. Crazy, huh? Because I'll probably get so many people offended if they were to hear this, if they're like these hardcore Americans, eating the caviar straight out of the fish, and like, you know what I'm saying, like hiking out of the mountains with a full-grown elk on their back, and you know what I mean? Again, you're so free to hunt by taking the life of another animal, and times and places, but I'm just kind of painting a picture. I'm just trying to give some context, because a lot of people don't even realize what's actually happening but they have heard that they're free because they're an American. And again, when I'm saying this, Americans are not the only people who can think about freedom this way. But out of my own personal experiences where I live, and again, there's no other country on the earth at this current time that sees freedom quite the way that Americans do. And that's just how it is. I mean, that's what this country was founded on, right? Breaking free from where we were, right? We sailed across, and here we are. And again, we're so free, but then the people who lived here natively now just have like little reservations that they can stay inside of captivity, right? Who's actually free? Just the guy with the bigger stick, until his stick breaks in half and the other person's is now larger, right? We all stumble, and then you're not free anymore in the way that you thought you were. It's an illusion, really, freedom. It really is, truly. So, yes, bottom line, that's awesome. I mean, that's like I'm not that I am, but I could just be like, wrapped up right there. There's the episode, because that's a hard-hitting last, like, final point. And that's all we could really have to say to really fully encapsulate what I'm saying here, which, again, no opinion to this. I'm trying not to, at least. I mean, if part of this is my opinion, then whatever. But as far as like the broad point that I'm making here and like what I'm discussing, I'm trying to hit it from ends and give like examples to where it's like, you know, I don't have like this whole attitude where I'm against the United States of America by any means, but I'm also not just like by any means saying anything like that the United States of America is the best country on the earth or whatever, because it's not. That might sound crazy because I'm an American and wow, are you not so proud of what your ancestors have done to get you to where you are and whatever? Well, I didn't choose for them to do that. I didn't tell them to do that. The things that have benefited me, sure, I can express gratitude for, but it's like there's this obligation to where someone's like ready to kill you, right? It's like you either express utmost gratitude and, you know, lay down your life for this country no matter what that you didn't choose to get born into, or else we kill you. Like, and that might sound harsh, but I mean, in all seriousness, it gets to that point. But yet that's what they're calling freedom, right? Holding you captive unless you say that this is the best country on earth. Oh, wow, I love this. I love how hard-hitting it is. I'm going to move my legs a little bit. Since the very founding of In the Image Clothing Company and within the podcast and stuff I've very clearly mentioned, right? We're just raw, we're real, we're just going to discuss things that are going to ruffle feathers on all ends. And I'm not trying to be right about anything, but I just want to discuss truth, discuss things as they are. And really a big thing is, like I'm saying, a lot of times we think we know what things are, but we've just, you know, been fed a belief by somebody or something, an organization, a country in this case, you know what I'm discussing here. So, I mean, you put all your eggs in the basket of freedom, if you will, and then if anything happens that opposes your idea and your belief of what it means to be free, now you feel like you don't know how to ever exist as a human being. You're like, well, I don't know what to do now, right? I mean, anything can happen. We're not in charge. And that's what people kind of get the idea and belief that freedom is that they're in charge. But again, that just means that somebody else now has lost their freedom. Or else what are you in charge of, right? It's another human is what it comes with, that context of you know what I'm saying as far as the way that people are seeing what freedom is in the ways that I'm discussing it. Yeah, right. So it's nuts. It is weird. It also is just what I say quite often, where I'm always talking about how it's crazy how we're allowed to do the things that we are, right? I mean, we have a perfect God, and he allows us to just make unlimited amounts of mistakes and just do whatever we want without, you know, with repercussions. I mean, there's always consequences, but we really can do whatever we want. I mean, you can go out there and do stuff that you shouldn't do, but depending on who's saying that shouldn't, right? Because you can. Oh, you sure can. You can go do some crazy things, but there's going to be some sort of repercussion. And so you're not just entirely free to do whatever you want. Even if there was no law, as far as like within the United States of America, we have laws that govern what we can and can't do. And right, even that in itself, to degrees, laws are amazing, but then also they can be overstepped, right? I mean, they can be too controlling. That's what I was saying. There's never going to be a perfect country or a perfect like group of people in any way in a worldly sense, because we're all equals. whether it's hard to believe or what, that's no opinion. That's the truth, not my words, but our living God. So, yeah, there's just never going to be a perfect country or any type of group of people that try to assemble themselves in any label or under anything besides under God, right? That's the whole thing, disciples of Jesus Christ. But then the gospel's the paradox, right? Where it's you do the opposite end of what the world would say is how you would be like free, quote unquote, or how you would get ahead, quote unquote. Within the gospel, we're taught to actually be in the back, right? The back of the line, the back of the bus, if you will, right? I mean, there's a lot of the back of the bus means a lot to like Black Americans, especially, right? Stuff like that. But that's what we're commanded within the gospel of Jesus Christ to do, right? Is be in the back, is to lay down our life for each other, is to kill them with kindness. You know, all this like opposite end of what you think would get you ahead if you're thinking of it in a worldly lens. And so freedom in itself is kind of opposing the gospel of Jesus Christ. You know, I mean, within the I think it was the Sermon on the Mount, Christ says, if anybody, you know, asks you to go with them 1 mile, go with them 2 miles, right? If somebody takes your cloak off your back, give them your, I don't know what the exact words as far as items of clothing that it's phrased as, but basically like if somebody takes your tunic, give them your cloak too, or if you know if someone takes your shirt, give them your jacket as well, or whatever, right? That's what we're commanded by God to do. And that's the opposite of freedom. Freedom, well, in the worldly sense, clarified, right? In the worldly sense of what we view freedom as being a lot of the times, and like in the way that, you know, that stereotypical American, right, would consider freedom, they would say, and not in every case, I'm not trying to, you know, give a blanket statement, but really, you know, it's like if somebody takes your stuff, they can't do that because you're free, so kill them. Like, you know, that's really what happens. And then people label that as freedom. But the point is, it's like how I say we shouldn't seek happiness. It's a fleeting emotion. Freedom is a conditional thing on as long as people are, you know, minding their P's and Q's, basically, doing things pretty well correct within a society, then you can have what you can label as, in your worldly sense of believing what it is, quote unquote, freedom. But it's a conditional thing, right? Happiness is a very conditional thing. And so giving a little bit, like, deepening the context, like, we have eternal lasting joy as disciples of Jesus Christ. We can be joyful in our sufferings. We can be joyful when we're going through a lot of things we didn't ever expect and definitely didn't want to go through. But happiness is just one of the emotions that is fleeting, and it's only what it is if you have that. And people seek happiness rather than just being joyful, knowing the truth of all things, the gospel of Jesus Christ. So freedom versus just being a good person, right? Being a disciple of Jesus Christ. We don't want to just put all our eggs in the basket of freedom, as I worded earlier, because if something happens and then your idea and belief of what freedom means to you is now not able to be, then what, right? I mean, then what do you do? And like then you have a crisis. Then you're going nuts trying to overthrow somebody else so that you're free. But wait, what? Right? We don't. A lot of times as human beings, that doesn't get seen. That's the only way freedom comes, right? That's kind of why I don't care how like maybe ungrateful I sound to be an American with the freedoms that we really do have. We have a lot of good freedoms. We definitely do. A lot of good privileges, a lot of good, even if we leave the word freedom out of it, right? A lot of good ability to be who and what we are to degrees. There's a lot of allowing for that to happen within what the United States of America really is. But at the same time, right, I mean, you're going around teaching your kids like, yeah, you can be free as long as you go shoot somebody else and kill them. That's how America came to be, is by killing others so that we can claim that we are free now. But what about the other person? So there's no equality in that. Yet it's a country that, you know, preaches that all men are created equal. So the point is, there's no perfect human being, right? And never, no human to live will ever be perfect. No society within, you know, the human race will ever be perfect. And so freedom isn't the goal if we want to be just good human beings, content, loving. Because if love were equal to freedom, then there would be no freedom in the way that Americans think of freedom as, because we're actually taught in schools and things, right, to praise these men who, our ancestors and the people who founded America, the people who currently are fighting in the military, the Army, the Air Force, the Marines, whatever it is that they go out to war. We're actually taught, I was personally, this is out of personal experience, within school as a kid, to praise these men and women who go out there and kill other men and women. We're literally being raised. I'm not trying to have an opinion or a side. I'm showing this as it is, okay? Don't think that I'm just bashing a country. Don't think that I'm just this side of politics, because I'm not either, necessarily. I mean, there's some things that I agree on here and there and what. I mean, we're just equal human beings. Somebody's running a political party and they have some opinions that I might agree with, and they have some that I definitely don't. The other side might have some that I might agree with and some that I definitely don't. I mean, we're human beings. We're equals. We got opinions. We've got ways of thinking the world should be correct if we're trying to do it out of our own doings. But really the point is to look to Jesus Christ, because he knows the actual answers to everything. He is the actual answer to everything. So we're actually taught growing up in schools to praise killers. That's the truth. I'm not trying to have an intention of like making you see what America is. I'm just discussing this truthfully, as if I were an outsider. Even I could say these same things. It's just how it is. It doesn't matter how in love with a country, of no matter which one it was, I am or not. I mean, I'm just a human being that's placed on an earth. There's no such thing as a country other than what we've, like I was saying, with just writing on a piece of paper that was once a tree. There's no boundaries until we put up a fence. And then the wind comes, and now you have to be like, oh, where was this, right? I mean, like your property line. It's like you think you know how big your property is until you can't find a little stake that they put into the ground. So what do you actually own? We don't. But we have these like illusions of owning things. We're just human beings. This is just the truth. I mean, there's no opinions to this at all. None. And so that's why it's so beautiful to have this podcast and be able to discuss things as we do and as they are. So anyway, yeah, we're literally raised to praise killers of other human beings who are equals to us. And you can believe whatever you want about who's equal to you or what. But then all of a sudden you're sitting there dying because of whatever reason. And the only person next to you is the person that you've been raised to believe that you should oppress and look down on. And they have like a remedy, like they're holding like soup or like some kind of antidote for, let's say you got bit by a rattlesnake here in Utah and you're laying on the earth and there's somebody who comes up to you, but they're like a race that you're not so fond of, and they have like this antidote and they can heal you, or if not, you'll die. But you're just like so raised to believe that they're so wrong, but that's what gave you freedom, is by pushing them away. And so you're going to do it, and now you die, and there's no freedom now as a human being other than the sweet release of death, right? Now you're free, truly, because now you go back to God. But then he tells you, hey, love one another, right? Inasmuch as you've done it to the least of these, you've done it to me as well, says our God, right? Everyone who among you, right, your brother and your sister and your mother, they're all equal to you, right? I don't know that scripture, but there's a scripture, something like that, similar to what I said about the least of these, where Christ says that, everybody is just as much him to us as he is to us. That's how he wants us to see each other, right? As if every one of us is like our God. Truly, heard correct, meaning we need to treat everybody well, right? I mean, it's the golden rule. Treat others how you want to be treated, treat everybody as if, you're trying to give them the utmost respect, even if there's somebody who's, well, I mean, Christ came, that's the whole thing, right? I mean, Christ didn't come and do anything other than just turn his back to the smiter. He let people beat him and do all sorts of evil to him when he did zero evil. He lived a perfect, sinless life. And so as people in the United States of America, I mean, there's people trying to get to our country because they hear about how great people say that it is, and they just want a part of it. And then when they try to come, they get killed just for trying to walk on a different part of the earth than they were previous. Again, that fence that just hasn't blown over in the wind yet, that you want to claim is now your land and you're so free because nobody else is. Right? That's just the truth. That's just how it is. That's what quote unquote freedom really is in the way that we see it under like this context of being like an American, right? Or whatever it means when it comes to wars. To win a war so that you're free is to take away the other person's freedom. And who gives you the right? Because there's one person that has the ability to give rights or not, and it's our God. And he tells us to do the opposite of fight, the opposite of having wars, the opposite of killing, right? We don't have any reason to kill anybody else. Besides, letting our emotions get the best of us, which happens. We're human beings. And that's really what that is. That's what that means. When wars happen, it's just that you're more emotional about thinking you're correct or better or whatever you think that you are, right? And so you just want to kill someone else. Yeah. So freedom it's something that needs to be understood. I'm not trying to tell people what to do. I'm not trying to sit here sound like I know best, but our God does. And what I've laid out here is just, discussing that. A worldly way of seeing things versus a celestial, eternal way of our perfect God's instructions to us of how to see things. That's really all I've done here within this discussion. So, yeah. I'm going to transition a little bit over. I mean, I could talk about that all day and whatever, but I just think it doesn't really matter. The point being, if you're doing anything that, no matter what you want to believe, every human is equal to you. That beautiful example of if you're dying there on the ground and somebody has the remedy for you, but they're this person that you're, taught or believe out of your own doings or whatever, that, you need to oppress them and look down on them because you're the one that's free, not their kind, right? I mean, again, that's what America is actually founded on, which is crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. It's the truth. It really is the truth. So, yeah, and so, right, you won't let that person save your life because you want to kill them, even though that's not an option in this case. Either you let them save your life or you just die, but you just refuse the help because you believe that you're better than them. But for how long, right? Because now you're not even around as a human being to be believing that you're better than them. It's so strange. It's just how people are, dude. It's how human beings are. Any of us, even myself, we can get any of us, including myself, can have the potential to just be as evil as the most evil human being that we have the idea of which one is the most evil. Like, it could be us. Why not? If it's not today, it could be tomorrow. You can have a change of heart in a not so good way, right? I mean, we're just human beings. We really are just equals. So, yeah, meaning we're equally captives. And that's why I talk about that all the time, right? We're not equally righteous. We're actually equally sinful by nature. We're not equally free. We're actually equally captives. And that's just the truth. And so when we can realize that, then we stop trying to get above another. And then we realize we can't. Because every time we try to, it only lasts for X amount of who knows. And then it doesn't, right? The biggest societies ever, the most technologically advanced or the most powerful or whatever from history, if they're not here anymore, they're not here anymore. And so that's so great that you were like at the top of the food chain in your mind for X amount of time, but now you don't even exist. You know what I mean? It just happens. It's just the human condition to think that we're better by having somebody else be labeled as worse. And that's what quote unquote freedom really is, truly. But like I said, I'm going to transition a little bit to clothing. Not for clothing only. I mean, if you don't really care about hearing about clothing very much, which we don't talk about fashion necessarily within In the Image Clothing Company, but It's not just clothing, but the human body. Uh, this is something that I grew up doing, wearing oversized clothing, and I thought it was so freeing, right? I mean, you've got this big, flowy, loose t-shirt that's 3 sizes too large, even a size too big, right? Or like a big like dress or coat or whatever it is, poncho, shawl. You got some big flowy thing on, got some big old wide pants, but they're like hanging on the ground, or like whatever, oversized clothing, and you feel like you're so free. Really, within your own physical being, you can't even operate. And so, going from, again, it's the illusion of freedom, right? This is exactly the same like idea as what I'm saying within like countries, or just a human being specifically individually being free over another human being. Um, it can't happen without repercussions, and it's actually an illusion. It's the illusion of freedom, right? So, wow, I love that phrased that way. The illusion of freedom. That is such a powerful line. It's the truth. It's like the illusion of control. Same thing. You don't actually have control, right? Everybody knows what they're doing until they don't, right? Everybody has the answers until they don't. I could say here, everybody's free until somebody else is. How's that, right? That's awesome. That's what freedom is. It's an illusion. You know, it really is truly no dispute, no opinion of mine. That's just the case. Now, but here's the thing is, with clothing, right, you're wearing this oversized shirt and you feel like you're so free, but you have no motion in your shoulders because your shoulders only work if they're elevated. And this oversized shirt is pulling you down and you can't even actually operate. And so it's an illusion of freedom. It feels free because there's air flowing up through the bottom of it and it moves as you do, but you're like very, very restricted physically, but the material will move around you, right? As you like twist and twirl standing in the wind, right? And so it's an illusion of freedom, but really your body is in such stiffness, turmoil, physically, pain, physical pain immensely, scar tissue, and things are just trying so hard to hold on, right? I always talk about, well, like I say at the intros of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, the human body is about the skeletal system. So the musculature is what operates the skeletal system, but when the skeletal system's not sitting in its correct location, the musculature will adhere to the bones and hold on to the bones to try to like stabilize in ways that it's not designed to. That's what oversized clothing will do. So then you'll have scar tissue along the edges of bones and along joints, bound up stuff, the fascia of things that adhere things to other things will just like glue basically into place when it should be very mobile. The body should be very, very naturally mobile. So it's the illusion of freedom, wearing oversized clothing. Clothing has to fit. It has to, or else you will be in physical pain, period, and done 100% of the time, as I say, right? Not my opinion, the truth. So, but we got to have some context of that, because you don't want like a skin tight shirt, but then your shoulder seams are in an incorrect location, or like pants that fit well around your waist, but then the waistband is lower in the front, and that's just going to cause pain as well, right? So you have to have context. But it's like freedom, freedom's great, sure, kind of, but let's have some context, right? You always got to have context. You always got to know some stuff. Ignorance is fine. We don't know what we don't know. That's actually the title of episode 56, the last episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. It was titled Do It Anyway, and I talked about how a lot of times we don't know things. Anyway, I've talked about ignorance a lot. I've talked about how, well, within the gospel of Jesus Christ, it's not my opinion, right? But we can't be held accountable for things we don't know, and it's okay to not know what we don't know. But once you know something, now you're held accountable for it because you know better, right? Yes. So that's why I'm very clear to say within the intros of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, regardless of what the topic's about, the whole goal of our company physically, right, is allowing the body to work. And so I always mention where clothing needs to sit. You don't have to buy In the Image Clothing Company clothing for that to happen, but because I currently, up until today's date, which I told you what today's date is, and I'll say it again at the end, as long as I don't get cut off, right? As long as I don't get cut off is what I said. I kind of slurred that, but yeah, I up until now haven't worn any quote unquote In the Image Clothing Company clothing, right? We don't have any yet. Hasn't come yet. So it's not like you have to purchase our clothing for that to happen, but we'll just make stuff that allows that to happen, meaning allows the human body to just work. But you need some context with things, right? We need to understand what freedom really is before we can be so proud to be free. Really, what you're being proud to be is somebody who's in control. But again, it's the illusion. There's no control truly as a human being, but we can believe the illusion of control. We can believe that we have control. So that's why I'm always talking about beliefs don't matter, opinions don't matter, hopes and desires really actually don't, but the truth is just there no matter what. So not that I'm ever going to be perfect at relaying what that is, okay? And I make that very clear, but I like to discuss things because then that's what comes from me discussing things is context that people didn't otherwise have if I didn't say this. I mean, some people might be Americans and they, again, it's not just about this one continent. Well, I mean, depends on what you want to call the continent. I guess Canada and other parts of, anyway, or the continent is what I mean. But the country of the United States of America, it's not just about our one country. That's not the only thing that we can use to understand what I'm discussing within this episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast when it comes to freedom. But again, speaking out of personal experience, that's the place that I would go to is discussing our country here that I do live in and have up until this point my whole life. So anyway, freedom, that's what I'll say. We'll wrap this episode up. I'm grateful. This is awesome. It's good context. I keep saying that word, and I mean it like slightly different and like coming at it from a different angle each time I say it because it's good context toward anything within, man, I mean, anything really, just as a human being. A lot of times we just don't quite know what the thing that we have heard all our life really is, And that's what it takes is some context to understand those things, I mean, you grow up believing something's one thing and then find out that just truly, all opinions aside, that thing is not quite what you always thought it was. But it hasn't changed. You just understand it better now. That's how freedom can be and is in a lot of cases for a lot of people. Yeah, we just need to understand what it really is and what it really means to be free, right? And I think that's one thing I'll restate one more time. It's kind of like happiness versus joy. Freedom versus just, I don't know, just living, right? I mean, being just okay with what comes because we're not in charge, but still like having the intention to do things that allow us to have the ability to just be us without other people being over us. But again, trying to be free is only doing that, but you're doing it on the opposite end, as in you're the one that's over the other person. That's all freedom really is, truly. That is all that it is. So, I mean, like, yeah, I said I was going to cut it. We'll cut it. Because I can just, we can give examples of whatever all we want, but I'm really grateful for the way that I've been able to lay this out within this episode here. So, yeah, like I said, we are a clothing company after all. It's the last two words in our name, In the Image Clothing Company, right? So we will have clothing available that does what we say it does, right? Otherwise, what's the point? Staying centered, fitting correct, allowing the body to work. Made out of 100% natural materials. There's just so much terrible clothing out there. Not that I'm trying to be mean to somebody, but the body only works how it does. And it's being so damaged if things are not allowing it to work how it does. So our clothing will just have every intention to do that. Allow, right? Keyword. So the body to work. Now, yes, my name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. Thank you for checking out this episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, episode 57, titled Freedom. Today, like I said, is the 10th of February, 2025. So more to come. Check out the other two sides of In the Image Clothing Company if you'd like to. There are things that you can definitely get from them. It's not just like if you want to like support me as a person. No, we give truth. Again, we're sinful by nature. I'm not perfect, nor will I ever be. So if you're expecting that, go somewhere else. Please walk away. Turn the other cheek and never come back. No, I'm just kidding. But just, we got to be accepting to the fact that we are not perfect. So as much as I do say that we discuss universal truths only, I try to, but, you know, I'm a human being. So anyway, what I'm saying mostly with like furthering that explanation of the fact that I will never be perfect at relaying anything, um, you know, we talk about the anatomy of the human body on the main side of the company. And then if you do play guitar, there's a lot that I know, you know, little nuance type of things, tiny little like things to be very particular about that will really, really help you when it comes to setups of guitars and things. So, right, I mean, you can get stuff from this company. That's the point of it. It's not about our benefit necessarily, other than, yeah, ideally making a living just so that I have enough money to survive. Truly, you know, but like, you know, comfortably survive as far as not just like barely scrape by. That's not the intention. But what I'm saying is the whole point is I'm not gonna make money doing anything. We're having this here in the Image Clothing Company podcast, for example, to just give truth on the gospel of Jesus Christ. The main side of the company is where we mostly talk about just how to allow our bodies to work. We all have one of them, right? And they just have to be allowed to. There was an episode, a couple episodes back of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Designed to Work, where I just went over the body is designed to work. It's not designed to sit on a couch. It's not designed to just like rest and do nothing because that actually weakens it. Rest really does weaken the body. And I discussed quite a bit of that within that episode. But we all have a body, no matter what yours looks like or is shaped like or how much of it compared to another human being or compared to like what we say is like, you know, the general layout of what a human being really is, you know. No matter if yours is different, you have one. And we need to do all that we can to just allow it to do what it does. So no matter what, you're going to benefit from In the Image Clothing Company. It's not just that we're trying to have people like what we do or want to care about what we do, because you don't need to by any means. But we just really are giving truth. So cool. I'm going to cut it just like that. Thank you. Thank you. And goodbye.